5,000 years ago, the city of Babylon was the beating heart of the world. It was a place of impossible wealth, surrounded by massive walls that reached toward the heavens and decorated with the legendary hanging gardens. To an outsider, Babylon looked like a paradise of gold and marble. However, inside those golden gates, the struggle for survival was as real as it is today. Our story begins with a man named Banser, a skilled chariot builder who lived in a modest corner of the city. One afternoon, Banser was sitting on a low wall outside his workshop. His unfinished chariot stood behind him, but he wasn't working. Instead, he was staring into the distance, watching the golden dust rise from the busy streets. He looked troubled. His hands, usually busy with wood and leather, were resting heavily on his knees. Banser was experiencing a feeling that many people feel today, the crushing weight of being hardworking but poor. He was a master of his craft, yet his leather purse was empty. His best friend, Kabi the musician, walked by and noticed Banser's gloom. Kabi was carrying a lyre, and he stopped to greet his friend. "Banser," Kabi said with a smile, "you look so deep in thought that you must be planning a great work. Why is your workshop silent today? Perhaps you have so much gold in your purse that you no longer need to work?" Banser looked up with tired eyes. "Kabi," he replied, "if I had a single shekel of gold in my purse, I would be the happiest man in Babylon. But I have nothing. I was daydreaming about being a man of means. I dreamt that I had a purse filled with heavy coins, and I felt a great sense of security. But then I woke up, and the reality of my empty pocket was like a cold wind." Kabi sighed. He understood the feeling perfectly. He, too, spent his nights playing music for the wealthy, only to return home with barely enough to buy a loaf of bread. The two friends sat together, watching the royal chariots roll by, carrying men dressed in fine linens and sparkling jewels. They began to talk about the unfairness of life. They had worked tirelessly for years, yet they were still living from hand to mouth. They were money poor, in the richest city on earth. "We have spent our lives being industrious," Banser said, his voice rising with frustration. "We have mastered our skills. We have been loyal citizens. But look at us. We are no better off than we were 20 years ago. We are like the donkeys that carry the heavy loads of grain. We do the work, but we only get the straw to eat. Is this all there is to life? To work until we die, with nothing to show for it?" Kabi thought for a moment, and then asked a question that changed everything. "Why is it that some men have all the gold, while we have none? Take our old friend Arkad, for example. He was once just like us. We went to the same school, played the same games, and he wasn't any smarter or harder working than we were. Yet today, he is the richest man in Babylon. He is so wealthy that the king himself asks him for financial advice. Why did he find the path to gold while we are still wandering in the desert of poverty?" The realization hit them like a lightning bolt. They had spent their lives learning how to build chariots and play music, but they had never spent a single hour learning how to become wealthy. They realized that wealth was not a matter of luck or magic, it was a science. It was a set of rules that they had simply never been taught. "I have a plan," Banser declared, standing up with a new energy in his eyes. "Tomorrow, we will not go to the market to sell our labor for a few pennies. We will go to the palace of Arkad. We will ask him to teach us his secrets. If he found the path, he can show us the way. We are not too old to learn, Kabi. The secrets of wealth must be like the stars, always there, but only visible to those who know where to look." And so, under the shadows of the great walls of Babylon, two humble workers made a decision that would change their destinies forever. They were no longer just a chariot builder and a musician. They were students of the ancient laws of prosperity. The next morning, as the sun began to paint the sky with hues of orange and gold over the Euphrates River, Banser and Kabi stood before the massive, bronze-studded gates of Arkad's palace. They were nervous. In Babylon, a man of Arkad's status was treated like royalty. However, when they were finally led into the great hall, they didn't find a man hidden behind guards and silk curtains. Instead, they found Arkad sitting at a simple wooden table, reviewing clay tablets. He looked at them with eyes that were sharp but kind, eyes that had seen both the struggle of poverty and the heights of success. "Arkad," Banser began, his voice trembling slightly, "we have come as friends from your youth. We have worked hard all our lives, yet we have nothing. You, on the other hand, have become the wealthiest man in all of Babylon. Is it luck? Or is there a secret that we have missed?" Arkad smiled, a slow and wise smile. "My friends," he said, "if you have not acquired more than a bare existence since we were youths, it is because you either have failed to learn the laws that govern the building of wealth, or else you do not observe them. Fate is a cruel goddess who brings no permanent good to anyone. Wealth that comes quickly, like a gift of luck, often vanishes just as fast. True wealth is like a tree, it grows from a tiny seed, and the sooner you plant that seed, the sooner you shall sit in its shade." Arkad then shared his own story. Many years ago, he was a humble scribe, carving records onto clay tablets in the Hall of Records. He worked long hours for very little pay. One day, a very wealthy man named Algamish came to order a copy of a difficult law. Algamish promised Arkad 2 copper pieces if he finished the work by the next morning. Arkad worked through the night, his eyes burning from the oil lamp. When Algamish returned, the work was done. Arkad looked at the wealthy man and asked, "Algamish, you are very rich. Tell me how I may also become wealthy, and I will carve your tablets for free." Algamish laughed, but he saw the determination in the young scribe's eyes. He leaned in and whispered a secret that sounded almost too simple to be true. "I found the road to wealth when I decided that a part of all I earned was mine to keep." Arkad was confused. "But everything I earn is mine to keep, is it not?" he asked. "Far from it," Algamish replied. "You pay the shoemaker. You pay the tailor. You pay the grocer. You pay everyone except yourself. You are a slave to your expenses. If you keep 1/10 of what you earn, in 10 years you will have a year's income saved. And that is only the beginning. Every gold piece you save is a slave to work for you. Every copper it earns is its child that also works for you. If you would become wealthy, then what you save must earn, and its children must earn, so that all may help to give you the abundance you desire." Arkad explained to Banser and Kabi that this was the first cure for a lean purse: start thy purse to fattening. He told them that for every 10 coins they put into their purses, they must take out only 9 for their expenses. At first, he admitted, it felt difficult. He felt as though he was missing out on things. But soon, a strange thing happened. His purse began to grow heavy. He felt a new sense of pride and security. He realized that it was easier to live on 9/10 of his income than he had imagined. "The sun shines upon the same world today as it did when Algamish spoke to me," Arkad concluded. "The law is the same. For every 10 coins you earn, keep 1. No matter how small your income, keep 1/10. Does your purse not feel light today? Start tomorrow. Pay yourself first, and you will see that the world does not end. In fact, your life will truly begin." A year had passed since Arkad had shared the secret of the 10% with his friends. Banser and Kabi returned to the palace, eager to show their progress. Arkad greeted them warmly and asked a simple question. "My friends, have you been faithful to the law? Have you paid yourselves first?" Banser nodded proudly. "Every time I received a copper for my work, I set aside 1/10. It was difficult at first, but now my purse feels heavier, and I no longer miss the money I did not spend." Arkad smiled, but then his face grew serious. "That is a good start. But saving is only the first step. Tell me, what have you done with the gold you have saved? Have you put it to work, or is it merely sitting idle in a jar?" Banser hesitated, but Arkad didn't wait for an answer. Instead, he decided to tell them about his own first year of saving, a year that taught him a lesson he would never forget. Arkad recalled how, after 12 months of disciplined saving, he had accumulated a significant amount of copper and silver. One day, his mentor Algamish returned and asked him what he had done with his savings. Arkad had answered with great confidence. "I have given it to Asmer, the brickmaker. He told me he was traveling across the far seas to Phoenicia. There, he promised to buy rare and beautiful jewels from the Phoenicians at a low price. When he returns, we will sell them here in Babylon for a massive profit, and we shall split the gain. Algamish, the wealthy old man, stared at Arkad in total silence for a long moment. Then, he let out a loud, booming laugh that echoed through the halls. Every fool must learn, Algamish shouted. But why did you choose to learn such a painful lesson? You trusted the knowledge of a brickmaker about jewels? Would you go to a baker to ask about the stars? No! You would go to an astronomer. Arkad, you have lost your year's savings. You have pulled up your tree of wealth by the roots. Now you must plant another. And Algamish was right. When Asmir the brickmaker returned from Phoenicia, he was heartbroken. The jewels he had bought with Arkad's hard-earned money were nothing but worthless bits of colored glass. The Phoenicians had cheated the simple brickmaker, and Arkad's entire year of sacrifice had vanished into thin air. I was devastated, Arkad told Bansir and Kabi. I wanted to give up. I thought I was not meant to be rich. But then I remembered what Algamish told me. He who takes advice about savings from one who is inexperienced in such matters shall pay with his savings for proving the falsity of their advice. I realized that the money was gone, but the habit was still there. I started again. I saved for another year, and this time, when I had money to invest, I sought the advice of those whose daily business was the handling of gold. This leads us to the second cure for a lean purse: control thy expenditures. Arkad explained that as his savings grew again, he felt the temptation to buy finer clothes and better food. But he realized that what we call necessary expenses will always grow to equal our income unless we protest. Do not confuse your necessary expenses with your desires, Arkad warned. Study your habits of living. You will find that many of the things you think you need are merely wants that can be eliminated. Budget your expenses so that you may have money to pay for your necessities, pay for your enjoyments, and satisfy your worthwhile desires without spending more than 9/10 of your earnings. By the end of his second year, Arkad had not only saved his 10%, but had also learned how to invest it with the help of a shield maker, who knew the business of metal and trade. The children of his gold began to work for him, and for the first time, Arkad felt the true power of compounding. He told his friends that the road to wealth is paved with 2 bricks: discipline to save, and wisdom to seek advice only from those who are competent to give it. By the 3rd year of their journey, the change in Bansir and Kabi was visible to everyone in the streets of Babylon. They no longer walked with their heads down, burdened by the weight of debt and worry. Instead, they carried themselves with the quiet confidence of men who possessed a fat purse. They had learned to pay themselves first, and to guard their expenses with the discipline of a temple guard. However, as they sat once again in the presence of Arkad, the richest man in Babylon, they realized they had reached a plateau. Their money was safe in their jars, but it was silent. It was not living. Arkad looked at their heavy purses and nodded with approval. You have done well, my students. You have proven that you can control your desires and protect your earnings. But mark my words, a full purse is a pleasant thing, yet it is not true wealth. True wealth is not the gold you carry in your pocket, it is the income you build. It is the golden stream that continually flows into your purse and keeps it always bulging, whether you are working or traveling, sleeping or feasting. Arkad then took them back to the time after he had learned his painful lesson with the brickmaker. He had started saving again, but this time, he was wiser. When he had accumulated a significant sum, he was approached by Agar, a shield maker. Agar was a hard-working man who knew his craft perfectly. He told Arkad that he needed a large amount of bronze to create shields for the king's army. However, he did not have enough gold to buy the raw materials from the merchants. I saw an opportunity, Arkad explained. I did not simply give him the gold as a gift. I lent it to him. But I did not lend it for free. Agar used my gold to buy the bronze, crafted the shields, and sold them to the king at a profit. When he returned my gold, he also gave me a portion of his profit as interest. For the first time, my gold had earned its own copper without me lifting a single hammer or carving a single tablet. But the real magic, Arkad insisted, happened next. He did not take the interest he earned and spend it on a lavish feast or a new robe. Instead, he took that interest, the children, of his gold, and lent it back out again, along with his original savings. Soon, the interest was earning its own interest. The grandchildren of his original gold pieces were now working for him as well. Think of every gold piece you save as a slave, Arkad told Banser and Kabi, his voice growing more intense. Each slave works for you to produce more slaves. And those slaves work to produce even more. If you are to become truly wealthy, you must put every coin to work so that it may reproduce its kind, like the flocks of the field, and help bring to you income, a stream of wealth that shall flow constantly into your purse. This is the third cure for a lean purse: make thy gold multiply. Arkad explained that the greatest power in the universe is not the strength of an army, but the power of compounding. He warned them that while it starts small, like a tiny stream in the mountains, it eventually becomes a mighty river like the Euphrates that cannot be stopped. Many men work hard for money, Arkad concluded, but the wise man makes his money work hard for him. Do not be satisfied with a pile of gold that sits idle in a dark corner. Gold is like a restless traveler. It wants to move, to trade, and to grow. Give your gold the chance to work, and it will build you a palace that your labor alone could never provide. Go now, and look for opportunities where your gold may earn, but remember the lesson of the brickmaker: lend only where the principal is safe and the return is certain. The sun was high over the bustling markets of Babylon, and the air was filled with the scent of spices, roasted meats, and the sweat of thousands of workers. Banser and Kabi were sitting in the shade of a massive stone pillar, watching a group of merchants argue over the price of a camel. Their own purses were no longer empty. They had followed Arkad's advice for months, and the weight of the silver coins against their belts gave them a sense of power they had never known. But with that power came a new, cold feeling: fear. Now that they had gold, they realized how many people wanted to take it from them. Everywhere they looked, they saw opportunities that sounded too good to be true. One man promised to triple their money in a week by investing in a secret gold mine in the mountains. Another claimed to have a guaranteed way to win at the dice games in the local taverns. They returned to Arkad's palace with a burning question: how do we know who to trust? How do we keep our gold from vanishing as quickly as it arrived? Arkad looked at them, and for the first time, he didn't smile. His expression was as hard as the walls of the city. Misfortune loves a shining gold piece, he began. The first soul-searching struggle of every man who begins to accumulate wealth is the temptation to move too fast. When you have no money, you are invisible. But the moment your purse grows fat, the world sends you 1,000 friends with 1,000 ways to spend it. Arkad walked over to a large, iron-bound chest in the corner of the room. This gold is the result of years of discipline. It is the seed of my future. If I lose the seed, I can never grow the forest. Therefore, the first requirement of a sound investment is the security of the principal. Do not be misled by the romantic dreams of making wealth overnight. That is not investing, that is gambling. And in the long run, the house always wins. He then told them the story of a young man he once knew who inherited a small fortune. This young man was eager to impress his peers, so he invested all his gold in a merchant who promised to bring back rare silks from a land that no one had ever visited. The merchant was a charlatan, and he disappeared with the gold, leaving the young man with nothing but a bitter memory. Before you entrust your gold to anyone, Arkad warned, study their record. Are they successful in their own business? Do they have a reputation for integrity? If you want to invest in jewels, go to a jeweler. If you want to invest in sheep, go to a shepherd. Do not seek the advice of a stargazer on how to build a house. This is the fourth cure for a lean purse: guard thy treasures from loss by investing only where thy principal is safe, where it may be reclaimed if desirable, and where thou wilt not fail to collect a fair rental. Arkad leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. The world is full of golden promises that are actually iron chains. Protect your treasure from the desire to make large profits too quickly. It is better to have a small, certain return than a large, uncertain risk. Guard your capital with the same ferocity that a mother lion guards her cubs. Consult with wise men. Secure the advice of those experienced in the profitable handling of gold. Let their wisdom protect your treasure from unsafe investments. As Banser and Kabi left the palace that evening, they didn't look at the merchants with greed anymore. They looked at them with caution. They realized that being wealthy wasn't just about having money, it was about having the wisdom to keep it. The snowball they were building was precious, and they would not let it melt away in the heat of a foolish dream. As the months passed, the lives of Banser and Kabi began to reflect the wisdom they had absorbed. Their purses were growing, their investments were starting to breed new coins, and they no longer felt like victims of fate. However, one evening, while sitting in Banser's small, cramped apartment, they realized a significant portion of their earnings was still disappearing every month. They were paying a heavy rent to a landlord who cared little for the leaking roof or the narrow, dark rooms. The next day, they approached Arkad with a new observation. "Master," Kabi said, "we have mastered the art of saving and investing. But every month, a large sum of our silver goes to a man who provides us with nothing but a place to sleep. We feel that this money is like water poured into the desert sand, it never returns to us. Is there a way to make even our living costs work for our future?" Arkad's eyes lit up. He gestured toward the beautiful gardens surrounding his palace. "You have touched upon a great truth," he began. Too many men in Babylon pay high rents for dwellings where their wives have no place to plant a herb garden and their children have no place to play but the dusty streets. I tell you, no man's heart is fully glad until he has a plot of ground he can call his own. This is the fifth cure for a lean purse: make of thy dwelling a profitable investment. Arkad explained that paying rent is a burdensome expense that provides no equity. He argued that if a man can convince a moneylender to provide the funds to build or buy a house, the payments he once made to a landlord can instead be made to the lender. Within a few years, the debt will be paid, and the man will own a valuable asset. Consider the change in a man's spirit, Arkad continued, his voice full of warmth. When a man owns his own house, he has a new pride. He works with more energy. His wife is happier because she can cultivate her own flowers and vegetables. His children can grow up in a place of safety and beauty. Because the cost of living has been greatly reduced once the house is paid for, more of his earnings can be redirected toward his investments. Own thy own home, and you will find that your soul is more at peace and your purse grows even faster. He warned them, however, that the house should not be so expensive that it becomes a new burden. It should be a place of comfort, not a monument to vanity. The goal is to eliminate a recurring expense and replace it with an asset that grows in value. A man who owns his own roof, Arkad concluded, is like a tree with deep roots. He cannot be easily blown away by the winds of misfortune. He has a foundation. Go, find a piece of land, build a house where your family can thrive, and you will see that this is not just a financial decision, it is a decision that strengthens the very fabric of your life. Banser and Kabi left the palace that day with a new dream. They realized that wealth wasn't just about gold in a jar, it was about the quality of the life that gold could provide. They began to look for land where they could plant their own trees and build their own walls, knowing that every brick they laid was a step toward ultimate independence. The years in Babylon were like the sands in an hourglass, steady, silent, and impossible to stop. Banser and Kabi were no longer the young, impulsive men who had once sat frustrated outside their workshops. Their hair was beginning to show traces of gray, like the dust on the roads after a long journey. They were successful, yes. They owned their homes, their purses were fat, and their investments were growing. But a new thought had begun to keep them awake at night. What happens when my arms are too weak to lift the hammer? What happens to my family if the Great Reaper calls my name before my children are grown? They found Arkad sitting in his garden, watching the sunset over the city's massive walls. He seemed to sense their anxiety before they even spoke. The shadow of the future grows longer as the sun of our youth begins to set, Arkad said quietly. A man who does not prepare for the days when he is no longer young is like a traveler who enters the desert without a water skin. He may feel strong at the start, but the heat of time will eventually bring him to his knees. Arkad led them to a quiet corner of his estate. This is the sixth cure for a lean purse: ensure a future income. No man can stay young forever. Therefore, it is the duty of every man to make provision for his old age and for the protection of his family, no matter how prosperous his current business may be. He explained that a man should provide for his future in two ways. First, by making small, regular investments that will grow over decades. He told them the story of a man he knew who, every week for many years, gave 2 pieces of silver to a moneylender. Because of the power of compounding, the children and grandchildren of those silver pieces, the sum eventually became a massive fortune that supported the man in his old age. The second way, Arkad continued, is to invest in properties or lands that will endure. Gold may be stolen, and businesses may fail, but the earth remains. A house or a field that provides rent or crops is a silent guardian that will feed you when you can no longer work. Banser leaned forward. But Arkad, what if we die before we can enjoy this wealth? Arkad's face softened with a rare, fatherly warmth. That is the very heart of this rule. A wise man does not only save for himself, he creates a legacy. He ensures that if he is taken from this world, his wife will not have to beg in the streets and his children will not have to serve as slaves to pay his debts. By ensuring a future income, you are buying peace of mind, the most valuable treasure in Babylon. You are making sure that the fruit of your labor outlives your own breath. He urged them to look at their current wealth not as a prize to be spent, but as a foundation to be fortified. Do not wait until your eyes grow dim to look for a path. Start today. Set aside a portion of your gold specifically for the years of the gray hair. Treat it as a sacred trust that must not be touched until the time is right. When a man knows his future and his family are secure, he can walk the streets of Babylon with a heart that is truly light. The journey of Banser and Kabi had reached a turning point. They had learned to save, to budget, to multiply their gold, and to protect their future. But Arkad had saved the most profound lesson for last. One evening, as the stars twinkled like scattered diamonds over the Euphrates, Arkad gathered his students for the final time. Many men ask for wealth as if it were a gift from the heavens. Arkad began, his voice echoing with authority. But gold is a reward for service, and service is a result of skill. Therefore, the 7th cure for a lean purse is this: increase thy ability to earn. Arkad noticed that Banser was still working with the same old tools in his chariot shop. He pointed to them. Banser, if you want to earn more gold, you must first become a better craftsman. A man who seeks to increase his wealth without increasing his knowledge is like a man who tries to catch fish in a dry well. The more wisdom we know, the more we may earn. That man who seeks to learn more of his craft shall be richly rewarded. He told them a story of his own youth. When he was a struggling scribe, he noticed that some scribes carved more tablets than he did and were paid more. He didn't complain about unfairness. Instead, he studied their methods. He practiced his hand until it was faster and his carvings were cleaner. Soon, his income increased naturally because his value to his employers had increased. A man must have a definite desire, Arkad insisted. Do not just say, I want to be rich. That is a vague wish. Say instead, I want to earn 5 more pieces of silver this month. A definite desire gives your mind a target. Once you achieve a small, definite goal, you train yourself to achieve larger ones. This is the process by which wealth is accumulated, first in small sums, then in larger ones as a man learns and becomes more capable. He urged them to never stop learning. Whether it was learning a new trade, studying the markets, or seeking the mentorship of those more successful, the investment in one's own mind provides the highest return. Precious jewels can be stolen, and houses can burn, Arkad concluded. But the skills you carry in your mind and the strength of your character are treasures that no thief can touch and no fire can destroy. Cultivate your own power, and you will find that the world will beat a path to your door to offer you gold. As Arkad's fame grew throughout Babylon, his evening lectures moved from small rooms to the great temple of learning. One evening, a man from the crowd stood up and asked a question that resonated with everyone present. Arkad, we have learned your 7 cures for a lean purse. But what about good luck? We see men who find bags of gold or win at the gambling tables. Is there a way to attract the favor of the goddess of luck so that she may bring us prosperity without so much toil? Arkad looked at the man and smiled thoughtfully. It is a natural human desire to seek the favor of the goddess, he began. But we must understand her nature. If you look for her at the gaming tables or the horse races, you will find a fickle goddess who laughs as you lose your silver. That is not good luck. That is merely chance, and chance has no memory. True good fortune is not something that happens to you, it is something you create by being ready when opportunity knocks on your door. Arkad then shared a story of a young man who had the chance to buy a productive vineyard at a very low price because the owner was in debt and needed to leave the city quickly. The young man knew it was a great bargain. He knew the soil was rich and the vines were healthy. However, he hesitated. He told himself he would wait until the next morning to make the final decision. When he arrived the next day with his gold, the vineyard had already been sold to another man who had acted immediately. That man did not lose the vineyard because of bad luck, Arkad explained. He lost it because of his own internal enemy, procrastination. We all have this enemy within us. It is the voice that whispers, "Wait, tomorrow is better," or "I am not ready yet." This enemy is the wall between a man and his good fortune. The goddess of luck does not waste her time with those who hesitate. She is a woman of action, and she is enticed only by those who seize the moment. Arkad emphasized that luck, in business, is usually the result of preparation meeting opportunity. If you have been saving your 10%, if you have been studying your craft, and if you have been watching the markets, you are lucky, because you have the means to act when a good deal appears. Those who have no savings and no skills will see the same opportunity fly past them and call it bad luck. To attract good luck, Arkad concluded, a man must overcome his tendency to procrastinate. He must realize that opportunity is a fleeting visitor who seldom waits for the slow. When a profitable path opens before you, do not argue with yourself. Do not let your fears hold your hand. Take the step. By taking action, you put yourself in the path of the goddess. Good luck, my friends, is the twin brother of swift action. He who acts quickly when the time is right is the man the goddess loves to reward. Bansir and Kabi realized that their success wasn't just about the gold they had saved, but about the many times they had said yes to a difficult task or a new investment, while others were still making excuses. They understood that their luck was actually the fruit of their own discipline and courage. The time had come for Arkad to face the most difficult decision of his life. In Babylon, it was traditional for the eldest son to inherit his father's estate. However, Arkad was not a typical father. He did not believe in giving wealth to someone who had not earned the wisdom to manage it. He looked at his son, Nomaser, and decided to set a challenge. He gave Nomaser 2 things, a heavy bag of gold and a small clay tablet inscribed with the 5 laws of gold. Go to the city of Nineveh, Arkad commanded. Spend 10 years in the world. If, at the end of that time, you have proven yourself capable, you shall return and inherit all that I own. But if you fail, my wealth shall be given to the priests to pray for my soul. Nomaser arrived in Nineveh with high spirits. However, like many young men with a full purse and a hollow head, he was an easy target. He met friends, who convinced him to bet his gold on a horse that was guaranteed to win. The horse lost. Then, he entered into a partnership with a man who claimed to be opening a profitable shop, but the man was a fraud and disappeared with the remaining gold. Within 2 years, Nomaser was penniless. He was forced to sell his fine clothes and work as a common laborer just to buy a piece of bread. It was during these dark nights, sleeping on a cold stone floor, that Nomaser finally pulled out the clay tablet he had ignored for so long. As he read his father's words by the light of a flickering lamp, he realized that the gold he had lost was the price of his education. He began to apply the laws with the desperation of a drowning man.